Okay, so it's summer 2021. It's high time you left your sheltered home, finally stopped social distancing, meet someone, fall in love, and then scream constantly for a month before dying. That last bit hopefully only applies if you're a cicada, which are currently emerging in the billions in the eastern United States. These guys have spent 17 years underground, but they're here now, and there are a lot of them. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm an evolutionary biologist, although I'm not a cicada expert, but I've been obsessing about cicadas lately, along with the 35 million other people who live in the range of the brood 10. When I realized that 2021 was the year that the cicadas were coming back, I knew I had to do two things. One, I had to learn about their funky evolutionary history, and two, join in on the cicada feast. If you're afraid of insects, you should probably sit this one out. It is good. They're so big. So periodical cicadas live most of their life underground, not sleeping, but developing super slowly and feeding off sap from tree roots. So every 13 or 17 years, depending on the species, they emerge all at once in these massive groups called broods, which are around for only a couple weeks. Brood 10, which is written as Brood X with the Roman numeral, is now out, and is the biggest of the 17-year broods, covering a massive area of like 15 states, with major metro areas like DC and Philadelphia included. So the life cycle of the cicadas is super cool. So in late May, they come out of these holes in the ground, and they start climbing. Up trees, up fence posts, up your leg if you stand still for too long. Partway through, they pause to molt or shed their skin, and the winged adult emerges and then continues on the path up the tree. Once they get to the canopy, the males start to sing in this deafening chorus to attract females, who click in response. I just paid real money, like actual money from my bank account, which I worked a job to earn, to buy that stock footage. So after mating, the female deposits her eggs in the tree. A little while later, the eggs hatch, and the nymphs just kind of yeet themselves off the treetops, hit the ground, and then burrow in to start the 13 or 17-year cycle all over again. It only happens here in the East United States. Like other places have, in Europe and whatever, have the annual cicadas, the boring ones that come back every year. But only here do we have the 13 and 17-year cycle periodical cicadas. That's mind-blowing. So there are a few curious aspects of periodical cicada evolution, obviously. One of the first questions I had was, why do they develop underground for so long? Like 13 or 17 years, that's almost enough time to form an adult human. For insects, that's super long. This long development is ultimately because they consume xylem, or kind of tree sap off of the root hairs of trees. So they're essentially drinking like very dilute maple syrup, so it's no wonder that they grow so slowly. Math nerds among us may have noticed that 13 and 17 are prime numbers. There are 3 different 17-year species and 4 different 13-year species. And weirdly enough, if you look at the evolutionary tree of cicadas, a 17-year species is always most closely related to one of the 13-year species. So because 13 and 17 are prime numbers, the two broods are unlikely to sync up, since they'll only coincide and be able to mate with each other once every 221 years. So the other reason to hunker down underground for so long is that predators won't be able to synchronize to your life cycle. So for instance, take cicada killers. These are wasps that, as the name suggests, feed on cicadas in this kind of gruesome way. They only go for annual cicadas, the kind that come out every year in the late summer. There's no real way that they could specialize on the 13 or 17-year cicadas. You can't evolve to rely on a food source that comes out that infrequently. It'd be like trying to evolve to only eat McRibs from McDonald's. This predator avoidance is a big deal for cicadas because they're tasty and slow and easy to catch. Like, I'm not a very competent predator, but I even managed to snag this guy very easily. But periodical cicadas kind of have this safety in numbers strategy. The predators, like squirrels and birds, get this all-you-can-eat buffet, but since there are just a lot of cicadas, something 1.5 million per acre, a lot of them survive even after the predators have their fill. So one predator of cicadas is people, and folks from around the world eat them. Like Aristotle, for instance, talked about the best life cycles of cicadas that made for good eating. Similarly, native people in what became the United States have used the periodical cicadas as a food source. I was curious to know what eating a cicada was like, so seeing as Brood 10 overlapped Philadelphia, I decided to eat them in a particularly Philadelphia fashion. try this cicada cheesesteak. Okay. Cheers. I mean, it's not bad. It tastes like Cheese Whiz. It's pretty cool. Not the best cheesesteak I've ever had. In my elementary school, we had cheesesteaks once a week, so this probably isn't even the highest bug content cheesesteak I've eaten in my life. I feel this kind of strange, like, wistfulness and sense of history when I read about cicadas. Like back in 2004, cell phones looked like this, websites looked like this, and 17-year-old me looked like this. I kept coming across things that made me acutely aware of how much time had passed and how much things had changed. Like the last time that Brood X came out, the RNC used cicadas in an attack ad against John Kerry, which I guess worked because George W. Bush was reelected in 2004. One of the first people to figure out the 17-year periodicity of the cicada and also document Brood 10 was Benjamin Banneker, who was a free black man living in Maryland in the 1700s. So like me, Brood 10 really lines up neatly with his life, and you can read his notes talking about the cicada arrival. So at 17, he was terrified and tried to destroy them. At 34, he knew better and realized they were not a biblical-style plague. And he correctly predicted that they'd come back when he was 68 years old in 1800. He ends his record with this poetic bit, saying that although cicadas' lives are short, they're nonetheless merry. They sing from when they first come out of the earth, and they still continue singing until they die. So yeah, that's periodical cicadas. It's a beautiful evolutionary story, and also a tasty, albeit non-traditional, cheesesteak topping. I feel very lucky I got to meet them, and I look forward to seeing them again when I'm 51 years old. Whew. Anyway, thanks, and I'll see you guys later. I try to do one of those things with the cool, like, video, food video people do where they, like, tap the knife and the thing magically cuts. You know? Like, you know the thing where, like, they're chopping something and, like, they don't show the chopping, they just tap it and, like, boom, it's chopped.